The novel Pride and Prejudice is set in early 19th century England and revolves around the Bennet family. The family consists of 5 daughters, with Elizabeth being the second eldest. Their mother, Mrs. Bennet, is obsessed with finding wealthy husbands for her daughters, as the family's estate is entailed to a distant relative and cannot be passed down to the daughters. Mrs. Bennet is desperate because, in her eyes, the future of her daughters depends on making a good marriage. When the wealthy and charming Mr. Bingley moves into the nearby Netherfield estate, Mrs. Bennet sees an opportunity. Mr. Bingley is soon introduced to the family, and immediately takes a liking to Jane, the eldest Bennet daughter. Jane is beautiful, and her gentle nature quickly catches his attention. However, Mr. Bingley's friend, the reserved and proud Mr. Darcy, initially makes a bad impression. Darcy is wealthy, aloof, and seemingly disinterested in the local social scene. He offends Elizabeth, the second Bennet daughter, by calling her tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me, during a ball. This remark hurts Elizabeth's feelings, and she forms an instant dislike for him. As the story progresses, Elizabeth meets Mr. Wickham, a handsome officer who claims that Mr. Darcy wronged him by denying him a promised inheritance. Elizabeth listens to Wickham's story, which reinforces her negative opinion of Darcy. Meanwhile, Mr. Bingley, despite his clear affection for Jane, suddenly leaves for London, without explanation, leaving Jane heartbroken. Elizabeth, believing that Darcy was responsible for the separation, becomes more resolute in her dislike of him. Unexpectedly, Mr. Darcy proposes to Elizabeth, though his proposal is arrogant and condescending. He admits that he loves her, but expresses it in such a way that insults her family's social standing. Darcy's pride and his belief in his own superiority come through in his words. Elizabeth is shocked and angry, and she rejects him immediately. She accuses him of ruining Jane's chance at happiness and mistreating Mr. Wickham. Darcy, devastated by the rejection, writes Elizabeth a letter. In the letter, he explains his actions, admitting that he did indeed separate Jane and Bingley, but only because he believed Jane was not as in love with Bingley as he was with her. He also defends his actions toward Wickham, revealing that Wickham is a liar who tried to elope with Darcy's younger sister, Georgiana, for her fortune. Elizabeth reads Darcy's letter with growing amazement, and as she reflects on his words, she begins to reconsider her opinion of him. Later, Elizabeth visits Darcy's estate, Pemberley, with her aunt and uncle. She is surprised to find that Darcy's servants speak highly of him, describing him as kind, generous, and respected by everyone who knows him. This new perspective softens her feelings toward him. When Elizabeth and Darcy meet at Pemberley, he is polite, kind, and attentive. He seems to have changed, and Elizabeth starts to wonder if she had misjudged him all along. The plot takes another twist when Elizabeth's youngest sister, Lydia, elopes with Mr. Wickham, causing a scandal that threatens to ruin the entire Bennet family's reputation. Mr. Darcy quietly intervenes, using his wealth and influence to track down Wickham and pay him off so that he marries Lydia and saves the family from disgrace. Darcy's actions go unnoticed by the Bennets, but they bring Elizabeth to a deeper understanding of him. Darcy's willingness to sacrifice his own happiness to protect her family changes the way she sees him. Meanwhile, Mr. Bingley returns to the area and proposes to Jane, who happily accepts. Darcy, now fully in love with Elizabeth, proposes to her once more, but this time it is a humble and sincere proposal. Elizabeth has grown and changed as well. She no longer judges him based on his wealth and status. Her feelings toward him have evolved, and she gladly accepts his proposal. The novel ends with Elizabeth and Darcy, as well as Jane and Bingley, happily married. Both Elizabeth and Darcy have undergone significant personal growth. Elizabeth has learned to temper her quick judgments, and Darcy has learned to recognize the importance of humility and kindness. They both find happiness in their marriage, and the novel concludes with a sense of resolution, where the characters have overcome their pride and prejudice to find love and mutual respect.